Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law that I don't like her food? My husband, 23, and I, 21, both come from different cultures. For example, I am actually an immigrant and only moved to America when I was just 12 years old. There's a lot of things my husband and his family does differently than mine, things that I'm not quite accustomed to. One being how they prepare and season their food. To me, it's just super bland, and the stuff they chose of food combinations just doesn't seem to go together. For example, my mother-in-law puts mayo on literally everything. I've even seen her make a tortilla pizza as mayo as her base, which she offered to me. Each time she offers me food, I always make up some kind of excuse to avoid eating it and try to be as polite as possible about it. But unfortunately for me, after I invited her to dinner, she felt compelled to do the same for me even when I told her it's not necessary. The next day, after the dinner we had together, she started making plans with my husband. When my husband brought it up to me, I told him I really didn't want to go, to which he replied, "My mom's food is not that bad. Could you please just deal with it for one day?" Now, in most cases, I would have just sucked it up in order to maintain a good relationship with my mother-in-law. But I'm pregnant in my first trimester, and I'm feeling extra nauseous. I honestly don't think I'd be able to keep the food down in the condition I'm in. My husband grew up eating her food, which is maybe why he doesn't think it's that bad. I mean, even my family thinks so when my mom invited her over for a family get-together. She brought some pasta, which sauce tasted like a whole package of ketchup was dumped into it. I ended up venting to my sisters and mom about the issue, and they all gave me the advice to just be honest. My mom even said that if I don't be honest now, it's something I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life. So I decided to call her and express to her that I'm not accustomed to eating the type of food she is used to making. And since I'm pregnant, it'll be really hard for me to swallow because of my nausea. I even offered to teach her the recipes from my homeland that she seemed to really enjoy. It didn't go well. She was really offended and told me that she'll never cook for my ungrateful self again, and told my husband. My husband is really disappointed in me because he felt like I should have just pretended to keep the peace and is now upset that my mother-in-law doesn't even want to invite me over again. I feel super bad now and honestly want to know if I'm the a-hole in this situation or if I was being too mean or disrespectful. Am I in the wrong? Update. I've invited my mother-in-law out to a tea cafe and spoke to her in person. I was able to explain myself better and chose not to back down on me not liking the type of food she cooks. I'm sorry, but this is my life, and I'm choosing not to live the rest of my future being pressured into eating foods I do not like, and I'm choosing to live my relationship based on honesty. I had an honest discussion with my mother-in-law and explained to her that I love her as a person and appreciate the time and effort she put into making my husband and I food, but I honestly do not like the type of food she chooses to make. I explained to her that it doesn't make her any less of a person or a bad cook, it's just my personal preferences. She took it extremely well this time and apologized for insulting me and told me that she's never been the best cook and would love to take me up on my offer to learn some meals from my homeland. I ended up suggesting that we took cooking classes together, and she loved the idea. I think the little bump in the road gave us a stronger bond, and I'm glad we were able to patch things up. I personally don't think the advice I was getting from the majority of this sub was good advice, and would recommend to anyone in my situation to be honest and kind. I even made it known to my mother-in-law that I myself would appreciate the same kind of honesty coming from me, and if she ever disliked food I made, or even a gift I gave, to please let me know so I can make or get something she'd enjoy. She even made jokes about previous gifts I got her. Lol. Top comments. I mean, you called her up to tell her that her food sucks. You wouldn't be offended if she did the same thing to you? If she was like, "The food you make is really unfamiliar and I honestly can't stomach it at all," wouldn't you be offended too? I would be. Soft, you're the a-hole. No, you don't need to eat her food. You don't have to like her food. But calling her up to tell her how you literally cannot imagine trying to choke down her food is pretty rude. I'd give that more than a soft you're the a-hole. OP doesn't have to like her food, and it would have been completely fine to say her nausea is really bad during her pregnancy, she's having trouble eating much of anything, but would be happy to come over for dinner when her morning sickness phase is finished. As an example, I learned to really embrace drinking lemonade and eating crackers because there were points where I couldn't eat/keep down anything else. You're not wrong, but I know certain textures and flavors can be off-putting for some people. The communication is the problem here, not the lack of eating certain food. Yeah, but what happens after she's no longer pregnant? I would not want to eat mayo pizza/ketchup pasta, barf, even if I could help it. Yes, I'm not a picky eater, but those meals sound truly awful. I think I would gag eating a mayo pizza and ketchup pasta. I read the update and I think it's great. It seems like there's a bit of a divide in the comment section for this post. Others may disagree with me here, but I do not think that OP is in the wrong. Yes, OP could have possibly gone about telling their mother-in-law in a better way, and I'm glad they did in the update. But no one should be made to do things that they're uncomfortable with to keep the peace. The best option in a situation like this is to be honest and respectful. I like how in the end, OP told their mother-in-law that she can feel free to be honest about anything she dislikes from OP. This open communication will likely improve their relationship in the long run. Am I the a-hole for not telling my mother-in-law her son had passed? I sound completely awful here, and I think I might be. Now that pretty much everyone in my family thinks I'm horrendous, I wanted an outside opinion. My husband passed away recently after a very sudden and difficult struggle with cirrhosis. It was easily the worst thing to happen in my life. The damage was invisible for years. We never saw it coming. He got so sick so fast. After they diagnosed him, he lived a little over a year. We called all our family, including his mother, who otherwise we don't have much contact with. I've always hated that woman. She has always been cruel to him, put him down every chance she could. When we would call saying her son was terminally ill, she first denied it, insisted we were lying. Then she went on about how we should have seen this coming, that this is just what happens when you're a drunk. Of course, this shut down the call pretty fast. She only called once after that, and we didn't pick up. A little over a year later, I had to bring him to the hospital, and in 2 days, he was gone. At that point, he was already just so confused and hardly conscious. I told my parents and his brothers, and we were the last people to see him. I wasn't doing very well at the time either. Everything just happened so fast. I wasn't ready to make any of those decisions, and between the doctors and the bills and just seeing him so sick, I didn't even think about his mother. In the days after, I just didn't want to deal with her. I know that's horrible, but I was just so tired. She called me a few weeks later. I'm not sure how she heard. She was hysterical, which I know is understandable. She said I robbed her of saying goodbye to her son, and robbed him of a proper service. I should have just hung up, but I was so hurt and so angry. I informed her a very nice service was held, which every important person in his life was there. I said she must be mistaken and blocked her number. She's gone ballistic, called my brother-in-laws in tears about how I've ruined her life, gone on Facebook about how devastated she is and publicly begging me to talk to her, how she just wants his things and to know what happened. Even my parents said it wasn't my place to make that choice for my husband, and I should try to talk to her. I know I probably should. I know he was hers before he was mine. But she made him miserable, and if he had been able to choose, I know he wouldn't have wanted her there. I don't think she deserved to see him, and I don't think she deserves to have any of the things that were his. But now that I write it all out, it really sounds horrible. Maybe I'm out of line to make that call. The only people who haven't said I was being cruel are my husband's 2 brothers, who know how she can be. But other than them, she was the only family he had. Maybe it isn't my right to interfere with that. Maybe beyond a-hole. Am I an absolutely awful person? Top comments. Why didn't his brothers tell their mom about the service? Not the a-hole. That's what I was wondering. If other members of the family were involved, why did they omit the info? Why was it entirely on her to inform his mother and not the brothers? Brothers could have told mother-in-law, but mother-in-law is putting it all on OP. Can't blame them for going no contact, not the a-hole. Did mother-in-law really think that someone was going to reach out after what she said when she was informed that he was terminal? She had her chance to be kind, but she chose to be herself, not the a-hole. I don't think OP's the a-hole here. This sounds like a very emotional and difficult situation for OP with the passing of their partner, and I wouldn't be surprised if contacting the mother slipped their mind. It also seems that the OP's mother-in-law has had a history of expressing toxic behavior towards both OP and OP's late partner. To be honest, if I were in this situation, I would not want someone that treated me poorly when I was alive to attend my funeral. Commenters also brought up the point that none of the late partner's other family members ever contacted the mother-in-law about their passing or the funeral. Maybe they were aware that he would not have wanted his mother to attend. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my mother-in-law attend my wedding after what she said about my daughter? I, male 33, am marrying the love of my life, female 25. We have a 10-year-old daughter. She was 5 when I met my fiancé. The bio dad is not in the picture. We did not start dating until my fiancé finished college 3 years ago. She worked her butt off as a single mom to get her high school diploma and then her teaching degree after her parents kicked her out when she got pregnant. She did eventually reconcile, and they helped her with the child care while she finished school. We met when she was a student teacher at the school where I work. For the last 2 years, her daughter has been my daughter. I'm adopting her as part of our wedding because I am her dad. Both my fiancé and myself are Caucasian. My daughter is mixed race. When we were discussing both our parents, I overheard my mother saying she can't wait to have a real grandchild. I immediately asked what she meant by that. She said that she just meant it's obvious that my daughter isn't biologically mine. She says that she wants a child that is obviously her grandchild to show off. I would never in a million years have guessed those words would come out of my mother. I told her she wasn't welcome at my wedding and not to worry about being seen with my daughter because she would never be seeing any of my kids. She has been blowing up my social media, claiming that it's my fault for not understanding how she feels. It takes everything I have not to block her because her and my dad share accounts. I want to just call her out as a racist jerk. My family thinks I should give her another chance. I don't want her and her attitude near my family. My fiancé says it's my call, but I know she is hurt by what my mother said. Am I the a-hole? Edit. It's my mom. I screwed up the title. Edit. After reading so many responses, I re-examined the conversation with my mom. I still do not know 100% if it is racism, but it still sounds like she thinks my daughter is less than. I won't have that. I'm seeing my mom today. We will talk. Top comments. Not the a-hole, but you almost gave me a heart attack with, we have a 10-year-old daughter. I thought you got a 15-year-old girl pregnant when you were 23. Well, yup, I could have written just better. Your paraphrasing may have needed some work, but your heart is clearly working just fine. Nowhere do you refer to her as your stepdaughter, or otherwise give any impression that you see her as anything other than your daughter, regardless of how or when she and her mother came into your life. Not the a-hole. Chris Hansen leaves the chat. The first portion of the story was questionable until I read that OP was the adoptive father of the 10-year-old. I don't think OP is an a-hole for protecting their daughter from their mom, who, at best, doesn't see the granddaughter as an actual member of the family, and at worst, holds prejudice and potentially racist feelings toward the little girl. If OP allowed his mother to continue this pattern of behavior with his daughter and future children OP and their partner may have, it's possible that OP's mom may ostracize the daughter from the family and treat her biological grandchildren better. I think that OP is making the best decision for their family by distancing themselves from their mother for the time being. Am I the a-hole for thinking my mother-in-law's obsession with my son is absurd? I have a 4-year-old, and I am due with baby number 2 mid-year. My husband, 27, and I, 25, have been together since we were teens. Mother-in-law, 47, was jealous from the get-go of our relationship. I've read up a bit on this. It's to do with her not having their emotional needs met by a partner, so they subconsciously use their son to meet those needs. Then, when I fell pregnant with my now 4-year-old, she kept saying, "my baby," and sometimes she would slip and start referring to hubby as our child's brother. This continued my whole pregnancy, and she would boast about it to anyone and everyone. Then, when he was born, it all amplified. She wanted to take him to spend alone time with him from the time he was a couple weeks old, and would be offended when we said no. She would always say that Grandma loves him more than his parents do. She would kick up a giant stink whenever she wasn't able to take him out alone. She never wanted to spend time with him around us. There were so many times where we tried to set boundaries, but she would always do it her way and guilt trip us. When we would do things together, she would physically push the pram out of my hands, and she would push the pram everywhere anytime we were together. "I'll push my baby." And I was never allowed. She would never correct people if they assumed she was his mother. And as his parents, we thought that was too weird. He is always her grandson, but never ever is he our son. Anytime we do anything, it is always about her. It's like she's now using my son to meet her emotional needs, which, even though it's subconscious, to me it's sick. I have tried to place more boundaries, but always get met with guilt trips. When we go places together, where my son will experience what I call first, all of those things are taken over by her. Even just small details like going to buy a drink, she needs to take him instead of us. She either takes him and does them without us, or I'll say, "Hey, maybe we could do this with his parents too," and she'll be unhappy and make sure that he holds her hand and he's sitting next to her and not us. She always makes sure if he comes over to me that she gets his attention back onto her. She constantly tells him she loves him the most. He's her favorite. He's her favorite person. And anytime we do anything together, to make her the center of his attention. Now that I'm having another baby, also a boy, I've been worried it'll be the same thing all over again. But it's not. I caught her telling my son, "Don't worry, you'll be Grandma's favorite always. You are Grandma's boy. You won't have to share. I'll always be your favorite person." And that is just horrible. She is saying things like, "You and Grandma can do things together, and Mom and Dad can have the new baby." Am I the a-hole for thinking this is just absurd behavior? Edit. We have had many talks. Me alone with her, him alone with her, us together with her. It always ends with her crying and guilt tripping us. Edit 2. I understand it now after reading comments. Sometimes it's hard to look in from the outside when you are stuck on the inside. For a while there, I thought taking her away might even be a bad decision because of how much he adores her. In my mind, I was taking away someone he cherished. After reading the comments, I can now see what it is from the outside looking in. Just needed that boost to get there and get out of the box. The guilt I was feeling was mainly because of how he feels towards her, which now I get. How could a 4-year-old not cherish someone who gives into his every whim? I get that now that's actually manipulation, but when you stand here and watch them, and you watch how his eyes light up when she's around, and how excited he is, it does take a little bit of a shove to look at him from a different angle and have that realization moment. Top comments. Your mother-in-law sounds dangerously mentally sick. No is a complete sentence. You need to stick to your no. It is also super unhealthy for a child to hear these things. I'm surprised you have not had behavioral problems from your son. You need to nip this now. Stop allowing her to guilt you. Think of your son's well-being every time. Please do not allow her to have alone time with him and correct her when she makes statements that she is making. It's time to confront her without your son around, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. I agree with this, especially the "grandma loves you more" statements. She needs therapy and can be a danger to your child. People like this are often kidnappers. Family members are the most likely to do that statistically. Agreed. I wouldn't let her near my family without months/years of successful therapy and her proving she's no longer delusional. She needs to realize how toxic her relationship with her grandson is, and it's not going to do him any good when he grows older. He's likely to cause issues at home and with his siblings when he grows up because she has him on a pedestal and is creating distance between him and those who are supposed to be closest to him. I'm very worried for the child and future child in this situation. The fact that OP is setting very clear boundaries with their mother-in-law and she is still refusing to accept them is a red flag. It is also very concerning that the mother-in-law refers to the child as her own, makes statements like, "I love you more than anyone," and seems to isolate the 4-year-old away from both of his parents. This seems like a form of parental alienation and enmeshment. The mother-in-law is using her 4-year-old grandson to have her emotional needs met, and that's too much pressure to put on anyone, let alone a child. I would no longer allow the mother-in-law to look after the 4-year-old alone, and may even consider cutting that relationship off completely, or at least greatly diminishing her ability to visit with the child. Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law she gave up her family and it's her fault she's alone? My husband and I have been married for 6 years. At least 5 of those have been almost no contact with his mother. I don't know the whole story, but his dad passed away when he was young and his mom remarried a man who was horribly abusive to him until he moved out. He tried to tell his mother for years, but she just wouldn't believe it. It got to the point that, for his own well-being, he just couldn't be around her anymore. This week, after years of silence, she shows up at our doorstep. She said she tried to call, but we have her blocked, so obviously it didn't go through. She was in tears and started crying about how her husband had trashed her house and left her, and she realized her son was telling the truth, how she didn't have anyone, all that stuff. She begged to talk to my husband. I said that she had some freaking balls coming to our house to cry after throwing her son to the side for a disgusting predator until that stopped working for her. I said she made her bed. Now's the time to lay in it, and it wasn't going to be in my freaking house. She was almost hysterical when she left. Her coming to the door put my husband in a panic attack. He's been too depressed to get out of bed since. I really don't care for that woman. When I replay it in my head, I feel absolutely terrible. Berating someone in tears never feels good, and now I think I might have just made things worse. Should I have done something different? Was this a jerk move? Top comments. Not the a-hole. She needed to be told. Didn't care when it was happening to her son, but oh, it's the end of the world when it happened to her. Good for you. Hold your head up high and keep looking after your husband. You're not the a-hole. You're your husband's superhero. I picture OP in a long robe and a pointy hat yelling, "You shall not pass," to her mother-in-law. There is a special place for people who choose their romantic partners over their own children. Dear old mom made her choice, and sadly, OP's husband has to bear the brunt of the consequences. OP should not have even a shred of guilt for telling the mom off. Not the a-hole. Edit. Typo. Not the a-hole. Agreed. Choosing a partner, especially a horrid one, over a child is madness to me. She needed to be told. Good on OP for prioritizing their partner's mental health. The fact that OP's partner was having a panic attack at the thought of having to face their mother says a lot about the mother-in-law as a person. I can only imagine the trauma that OP's partner faced at the hands of his mother's husband. The fact that the mother-in-law is only concerned after it happens to her, and that the mother-in-law is only contacting them after years of radio silence in order to receive the emotional support that she denied her son, is truly saddening. OP is in no way the a-hole. It should not feel an ounce of guilt for setting boundaries or protecting their partner. Am I the a-hole for not telling my family that I'm going to die? I, 23 female, found out that I'm terminally ill and likely only have a year left, even with treatment. I recently just finished my internship and was offered a job, which I quit only being at it for 3 months after finding out and moved back in with my parents. My parents don't understand why and have questioned me quite a bit about it, and my responses have been, I don't really feel like talking about it, and they have respected that. I have been moved in with my parents for about 2 weeks and had gotten a phone call from my doctor, which my younger teenager, 17, sister, has overheard because I didn't know she was home and had the phone on speaker. She started aggressively questioning me about it and accused me of being selfish for not saying anything and asked me what I expected to happen when I started showing obvious signs and got to the point where I couldn't care for myself. She demanded that I told my parents as soon as they got home, as well as my other sibling, grandparents, and even friends. I begged her not to say anything, and she agreed not to, but expressed how she doesn't think it's the right thing to do though. Now I feel really bad because I really don't want to tell anyone. I just want my last moments to be filled with happiness, and I feel like once everyone finds, they're gonna be sad and I'll have to cheer everyone up while coping with my illness, as everyone always goes to me when they're experiencing hardship, even my parents. Top comments. Honey, I don't want to call you the a-hole here, but the honest truth is that you now live with your family. That means when things get worse, they're going to be the ones there to take care of you, and they really should be aware and able to prepare for that. I understand that you don't want to hurt them, and you don't want to have to console them when you're going through it. But I do feel like it's important to sit them down and have a conversation about it. Jumping on top comment to say, very gentle, you're the a-hole. From reading your comments, you at least thought a great deal about what the last months/weeks of your life will look like, and I respect that immensely. It takes great strength to do that. Where you stray very slightly into a-hole territory is your decision is going to have a direct impact on your parents/siblings' grief in the aftermath. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what your desires are in this. It's an issue in that once you are gone, your parents are quite literally going to tear themselves apart with blame as to why you felt they couldn't trust them with the knowledge. In addition to that, the sheer furious resentment they'd unload, willingly or not, on your sister for knowing and not telling them will quite likely destroy that relationship too. And yes, you're likely quite right. If you do tell them, it will crush them, and time that could be spent creating memories together will be twisted slightly with the grief everyone will feel. That doesn't need to mean those memories are a bad thing. Too many people focus on the former part of bittersweet, and as awful as it will be for your parents, ultimately, in the years to come, they'll be incredibly grateful that they got the chance to share in them and appreciate them for what they are. I don't know if a-hole's exactly right. OP's very young, was at the start of their career taking off, and found out they have less than a year to live. Shock and denial are likely huge factors at play here, and honestly could continue to be so for the rest of their life. And having that conversation with family may seem overwhelming and daunting, having to deal with their family's emotions, when they've not really grappled with these themselves. But it's a bad situation, on a timer that's not going away. They should likely have this conversation with their family, because end-of-life decisions are going to come sooner rather than later, and they need to be as ready as they can be. Plus, having a little knowledge may allow them to make memories and get a semblance of closure. I'd suggest maybe bringing the family to a doctor's appointment, or to a therapist or religious figure if they have one, or something to tell them in a setting where OP doesn't have to do all the emotional legwork. OP's not an a-hole. I feel that they're probably just overwhelmed and confused by the bad news. To OP, I would suggest letting their family know what's going on so they can be supportive, but this is a difficult situation for everyone. Am I the a-hole for telling my family the reason why I'm leaving so soon? Throwaway account, because I'm pretty sure my family uses Reddit. I'm on mobile, please don't kill me. A little backstory. My brother is a freaking a-hole. He's inconsiderate, obnoxious, toxic, and is a pain in the butt to be around. He smells because he doesn't shower often, and he refuses to pull himself out of a dead-end job. He'll play video games at 2 to 3 in the morning, which I'm sure we've all done, except he is loud, obnoxiously loud. He plays with his friends for hours, screaming at his games, yelling at his friends, talking loudly and stuff. Genuinely just being a jerk. He tried to charge me for a Red Bull I tried, and hated that I didn't know was his. I refused as he had drank and eaten stuff I had bought before, and I never tried to get him to pay me back. This is another thing. He eats other people's food without asking. It's a bunch of small stuff that he does that pisses me off. I have tried to get my parents involved because if I tried talking with him, it would just be a screaming match between us. And to their credit, they have tried but failed. He'll say, okay, the entire time, until they leave, then continue to be a jerk. Things only got worse when we moved to a new state, where I don't feel like I belong. I hate it here. Many months back, I started my enlistment process for the military, and just a few months ago, I continued it, and I'm currently waiting on ship out. There is a problem though. My ship out date is right before Thanksgiving. My family is torn. They asked me why it's so close, so I decided to tell them. For those who don't know, the military will ask you, how soon can you go to basic? And if you put ASAP, they'll try to get you into basic ASAP. So I told them I put ASAP, and I guess they put me in ASAP. My mom asked why, and I told her. I told her in the kindest way possible that I wanted to leave as soon as possible. I'm tired of constantly fighting my brother. I'm tired of waking up at 3 a.m. to him screaming at his freaking game, and I'm tired of them not enforcing rules on him. I don't like this state. I want to leave this house as soon as possible. My mom didn't answer and just went to her room. I feel terrible, but I frankly feel like it needed to be said. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for saying why I'm leaving so soon? Edit. Thank you all for your very kind words. I tried to upvote and reply to most of you, but there are so many. And r/, if you're reading this, hi. Update. I tried talking with my mom again, and it didn't go well. She tried to shift blame off of her and said that I was too loud at night, and to her credit, I sometimes will cook dinner at around 10:30 to midnight if I haven't eaten yet. I understand that, however, she kept bringing it up like it was a major point to be made, despite all the other stuff my brother does. She also got into me for not having a job, despite the fact that I have enough money saved to sustain myself for well over the 3 months until I go to basic. I used to have a job, however, I lost it when she made us move to a new state. And due to me leaving so soon, I just don't feel the need to get a job, and I'll be fine for the next 3 months. The only person who has supported me is my father, who has been helping me throughout my enlistment process. After this conversation with my mother, I still feel terrible for making her upset, but I know I made the right call putting ASAP on my survey, or whatever it was. Thanks for all your kind comments. Top comments. Not the a-hole. By enabling your brother, she created this situation. There are 2 parents here. Not always. Could be that my situation's a stepbrother, but my mother never enabled him. But my stepdad and his ex did, and the ex made sure to undermine my mother and convince her kids that she didn't have any authority over them. But my stepbrother is just like OP's, and literally the only person who likes him is my stepfather. Right. They needed to hear it. Don't feel bad, OP. Her reaction means she heard you, not the a-hole. OP is not the a-hole. I think OP should get the chance to truly express how they've been made to feel and how their brother's behavior has impacted them. OP's mother is definitely in the wrong for guilting OP into feeling like it was wrong for them to express their feelings and opinions. Hopefully, the fact that OP is leaving will give OP a much-needed break from their family. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents and my extended family that my sister is none of their concern anymore? My sister recently turned 18 and moved in with me, 20 female. To provide some context, I need to go into our childhood. My parents named me Serafina, and apparently it was my mom's favorite name ever, and once they had me, they were happy. When my sister was born, they picked the top name of that year, which was Emily. Not as much thought went into it really, but they figured safe was better than nothing. Extended family loved my name and showered a ton of praise on it my whole childhood, and would often make snide comments about Emily's name and how it was a shame her name was nothing compared to mine. Some would even ask our parents how come they ran out of really beautiful names after just me, and Mom and Dad would sit and laugh it off. All of this was happening when Emily could hear. Often praise around my name came with praise for how pretty I was and how my name suited me that way. She never got that kind of praise or positive attention at all. A beautiful name for a beautiful girl and all of that. I'll tell them to stop bringing it up around Emily and was ignored. I'd tell her that her name was pretty too and that she shouldn't listen to our family. It chipped away at her confidence, at her self-esteem. When I turned 18 and moved out, I made sure Em had a safe space with me. It helped, but she still felt unsupported and like the family didn't like her very much. When she turned 18 a couple months ago, she moved in with me and cut ties with our family. I have helped her to find a therapist, and have reminded her every day that she is important and loved, and that our family were jerks for always overlooking her and tearing her down to lift me up in her presence. It was only a week ago our extended family invited us to a family wedding. Em didn't want to go, and neither did I, so I RSVP'd no. This led to contact from a few of them saying Em is always at these things and I should stop hiding her from them. I told them Em is none of their concern anymore, to leave us alone. They told me Em is their daughter/granddaughter/niece, that I have no right to say she's none of their concern. She will always be their concern. I told them they had 18 years to value her, and they tore her down and ignored me when I said they were saying and allowing others to say was mean. They accused me of causing trouble because of what I said. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Big sister's gotta protect. You sound like my big sister. If they want to be in her life, they'll have to earn their place. It's your sister's decision how much she wants them in her life. Sometimes the best way to love someone is to cut them out of your life. Forgiveness doesn't equal allowing the hurt to continue. Forgiveness is setting boundaries, communicating them, and defending them. If your family cannot respect these boundaries, they have not earned forgiveness or a place in your sister's life. Not the a-hole. Protect mode was activated on this one. Good job, OP. You're a fantastic sibling. Wish I had a sister like you, lol. Sitting here feeling both intensely happy for OP's little sister and straight up jealousy because of how much I wish I had a sister like that. The OP in this story is definitely not the a-hole. OP is a great older sibling by going out of their way to protect their younger sister. With a family like this, who needs enemies? OP's family knew what they were doing, damaging the younger sister's self-esteem, but passed it off as poking fun or teasing. OP did the right thing by standing by their sister and creating a safe space for her. Am I the a-hole for saying my brother-in-law is not my family? Throw away, cause some fam and friends have read it too. I, male 19, have a sister, female 23, married, and my brother-in-law, male 24. Now I like my brother-in-law. He's a cool guy to hang out with, and I guess he's like a big brother I never had. But one habit I don't like of his is that he tends to muscle his way into family conversations and pass judgments, especially on me. In this instance, I had just come from work and my sis and brother-in-law had come to visit. Understandably, I was tired. It's a manual labor job, and I didn't feel like socializing too much beyond sitting on the couch and watching Netflix. My family have an impression of me being someone antisocial, largely because I struggled to make friends when I was in school. Hated it back then, but I've learned to enjoy and love time alone, like many introverts. Anyway, as usual, my family, extended relatives were there too, as sis and brother-in-law rarely get to visit due to his job. Start commenting on how unsocial I'm being. comments I've learned to ignore over the past few years. Brother-in-law begins to jump in and make similar statements, telling I should be more welcoming to them as they are my family. I have to learn to be more social to survive in today's world, and the real stickler for me, I have to learn to go talk to people in order to get a better job than the one I have now, which I happen to love. So I snapped, told him, "Why are you making any comments about me? You don't know me. You're not my family. You're nothing to me." Well, he went nuts, saying how could I say that, and by disowning him, I was also disowning my sister. The whole family went silent, including my sis. After they all left, however, my parents did say that was a bit too far, and my sister said that I had burnt a bridge for no good reason, except my own ego, not being able to handle criticism. I haven't really replied to her message, and I sure as hell don't give a rat's rear end about the messages from extended family members saying I made the night uncomfortable. Anyway, Reddit, am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Though you were a bit harsh, the little snide comments are toxic. It's horrible having to deal with that over time. Your comment about him being nobody were not okay, but I get you were probably just so sick of the accumulation of insults over the years. Just apologize and explain how you have a super tiring job and don't appreciate snide and passive-aggressive comments when you get home. As someone who has constantly had to deal with that, it took my family a long time to realize those comments are disrespectful and counterproductive. I had to say stuff like, "Do you think that makes me want to see you?" You'll understand that's a comment meant to get under my skin and does not make me feel welcome here in my own home amongst my family. Not the a-hole. But either you feel like he's a big brother you've never had, or not family to you. Your comment was harsh, but honestly he wasn't saying anything nice as well, so he had it coming. I might be in the minority, but someone marrying into family doesn't mean that you actually have to view them as family. Just like how you don't have to view your in-laws as family when you marry yourself. But I guess it's a taboo to say something like that. In my opinion, OP is not the a-hole here. I can imagine that it would feel terrible to have people bad-mouthing your career behind your back, right after you just got home from a long shift at work. The fact that it was OP's family members and brother-in-law make it worse. Oftentimes, toxic family members disguise insults and hurtful words as jokes or criticism. But OP called out their brother-in-law's criticism for what it was, a way for a brother-in-law to lower OP's confidence while boosting their own ego. OP's words may have come in the heat of the moment. However, I don't think OP should have to apologize. If anything, this situation just further exposes the troublesome family dynamic, since everyone seemed to come to the brother-in-law's rescue, instead of realizing how hurtful the comments were to OP. Because that would mean also having to take accountability for their role in the situation as well. Am I the a-hole for refusing to include my family on a trip? When I was 15/16, my sister was invited to a medical study for a disability she has. As a part of this study, her and my parents traveled to DC 3 times over the course of a year. The first time, I couldn't go with because my parents couldn't afford to buy me a ticket, on top of what the study was funding. They found out when they were there that they would have totally funded my ticket. So when the second trip was lining up, the week of my 16th birthday, I was super excited because I thought I could finally see DC. I wasn't able to afford my school's 8th grade trip, so the idea of a Sweet 16 in DC was the best thing in the world to me, especially as a kid who was really interested in politics. My parents didn't allow me to go on this trip because the week we would have been there would have conflicted with my first day of school. I have an early September birthday. I was completely devastated because not only were my DC dreams crushed, but I was also going to be alone for my 16th birthday. My best friend's parents ended up letting me stay with them for the week so that we could do something special for my birthday. I don't even remember why I couldn't go on the third trip. Probably something to do with school as well. They had a lot of time to go sightseeing and have fun, and it was a bummer to miss out on that with my family. I'm now 30 and I'm about to see DC for the first time as I'm interviewing for a job. It's the ideal job because it's half remote and half on site, and I'd be able to split my time between DC and New York City. My interview is on Tuesday, but I'm flying in tomorrow to have some extra days to really see everything I want to see, and also to just give myself time to relax before a high-stakes interview. I'm funding this extra trip with some inheritance money I received late last year. When my parents found out about this trip, they asked if I could use some of that inheritance to fly them out so we could finally do a family trip together. They said they could show me some of the places they know and what became their favorite parts of DC on their trips. While I do have enough money to cover it, I don't particularly want to. I want this to be my own special trip where I'm doing what I want to do and seeing what I want to see. I also want the time that weekend to relax and not have to go on a tour of all the places my family went without me. I understand it's petty and that it's been a long time since all of that, but it still sort of hurts to think about, even though it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things. I told them no, and they're making it out to seem like I'm rejecting them and acting in revenge for the past trips, which is actually not true. It has way more to do with the stress of the interview and wanting to protect my peace than it does for any idea of revenge. I feel fine in my decision, but my family called me a spiteful a-hole, so I'm asking here as a reality check for myself. Top comments. Not the a-hole. It's your money. They're just butthurt to be on the other side of things. They will survive. They've been there 3 times. You've been there none. Enjoy your trip. They'll just have to get over themselves. I think they're projecting how they themselves would act in OP's place. They know they were nasty and unfair when OP was 16, so they expect OP to behave the same. OP, you're not the a-hole. 100%. Go enjoy your trip to DC, and I hope you ace the interview too. Even without the backstory, not the a-hole. Your parents are acting super entitled. You do not have to pay for a vacation for them just because you can afford it. They're being mean and manipulative. Go enjoy your trip and don't give them a second thought. OP is not the a-hole. As an adult, OP is entitled to spend their money any way they see fit. To top it off, OP's parents were not willing to take OP when they had the opportunity to do so. To top it off, OP's parents were not willing to take OP when they had the opportunity to do so, even when the trip would be at no cost to them. I suggest that OP take this time to enjoy the trip that they've always wanted to go on, and do so with a guilt-free conscience. Am I the a-hole for saying it's easy to be a perfect mom when you don't have kids to someone who's infertile? I, 28 female, have a 2-year-old son. My brother Tommy, 25 male, has been dating Gianna, 22 female, for a few months now. She's a little judgmental. Not of me particularly, but in general. She babysits for other children and constantly judges the parents. She says she'd never let her kids act the way the kids do. Sometimes it makes sense, and I agree. Others, she claims that her future kids will never ever throw a tantrum. They'll accept no the first time, the only time. I've told her good luck with that when it comes to toddlers. My son is learning no and has appropriate consequences for tantrums, but he's learning. It'll happen. It's also important to note that Gia is infertile. She can't have kids without medical intervention or adoption. Saturday night, we went out for my dad's birthday dinner. I messed up and didn't prepare my toddler well enough. He got overstimulated and began melting down. I quickly took him out of the restaurant to calm him down before he could cause a scene. It took all of 5 minutes, and we returned. He got food and was all good. Gianna started on, "My future kids will never act like that in a restaurant." I ignored her. The next day, myself, Tommy, our parents, my son, and Gianna went to the mall for an event they're having. My son was playing in a structure, and I had my eyes on him. My mom asked me a question, and I turned to answer her. When I turned back, he was gone. Panic set in, and myself and my parents and Tommy, along with some people nearby, began helping me look. It only took a few minutes to find him, and he was perfectly fine. He had seen a pretzel cart and wandered off. I was still pretty worked up, holding on to him for dear life. He had never wandered off before. My mom was reassuring me, saying it happened to her with both of us kids. Then I hear Gianna, "Why weren't you watching him?" I tried ignoring her, Then she said, I would have never let him wander off. I was already so worked up and upset, I snapped. I said, it's easy being a perfect parent when you don't have kids. Come back to me when you do. Gianna got visibly upset. Then she made Tommy take her home. Tommy and Gianna have both texted me, telling me how insensitive that is since she can't have kids. To me, she talks about having kids all the time. So why is it different for me to say that? Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. You weren't referring to her inability to have biological children. You were referring to her inability to keep her yap shut. Yeah, it's pretty easy to say you'd never do something when you don't have kids. Kids aren't accessories. They're individual human beings who can and will react differently. Yes, I am so fond of saying that I was the perfect parent/mom before I had kids. Now I have a he-knows-all 6-year-old and an attitude-filled toddler. It was so easy to make snap judgments when I was the fun aunt and the easy-peasy babysitter who only had to have the kids for a few hours. Yep. However, who the heck thinks a kid will never throw a tantrum? That would actually be abnormal and unhealthy. Even meltdowns, the kids don't mean anything bad, they're just overwhelmed. It just doesn't make sense to think that will never ever happen with your kid. I don't think OP is the a-hole, though they could have worded things differently. I imagine it was incredibly stressful for OP to not know where their child was or if something bad had happened to them, so it was incredibly inappropriate for Gia to immediately go into blaming OP for not being able to locate their child. Although Gia sounds like a very judgmental person, I do believe it was a bit mean-spirited to include the line, come back to me when you do, knowing that she is infertile. I think that instead OP should have just been direct with Gia and told her that they don't appreciate her input on how they parent their child. Am I the a-hole for refusing to babysit my sister's kids? My female 24, sister, female 29, is in a tight spot. She has 2 kids, Ashley 6 and Matt 4. Her husband passed away in a work-related accident. I won't go into much detail, but she got quite some money for his life insurance, and there's some other legal issues going on, and maybe she'll get more money out of it. Prior to the accident, she was a stay-at-home mom, but now, for obvious reasons, she needs to get a job. I don't have a regular job, so I'm free most days. Well, she asked me to babysit for her kids during the days. She said she'll pay me whatever I want. She said she found something that will pay her well, and she'll be able to keep their house and lifestyle and save the money for her kids' future/emergencies. I told her that I don't want to be a babysitter and to ask someone else. She told me that no one else can because her in-laws live in another state. Our brother and sister-in-law work too, and both our parents also have jobs. Basically, I'm the only one who's free during the days. I told her in that case she should send them to a daycare, but she said that the kids aren't that well since the accident, and she would prefer if they can be babysat by family, at least for a couple months until they can get used to the idea of losing their dad. Lastly, she told me if I could at least babysit for her in the morning, then her mom agreed to cut some hours so she can babysit during the afternoon. I told her that what they're going through is very sad, but I stood my ground about not babysitting. That's simply not what I want now. I told her that was the final answer and to stop calling me over that because I won't change my mind. She cried and called me an a-hole. She went on and on about how hard her life is and such. She said that her kids cry all the time because of their dad, and they need family now, and how I should help her when I can. I told her that her kids are not my responsibility. She can ask, but I already said no, so she should drop it. Now everyone in my family is angry at me. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I am free most days because I work some nights. I don't work full-time. However, that's not relevant. I don't pull all-nighters. I get home quite early. My job is not the reason I don't want to babysit. The reason why I don't want to help her is simply because I don't want to. I could babysit if I would want to, but I don't. Top comments. Probably unpopular. You're the a-hole. Your sister and her children have been through massive trauma lately. It's understandable that she wouldn't want to just send them off to daycare. After years of your niece and nephew having their mom all the time, they've lost their dad and their mom is going back to work. They're 6 and 4. They don't fully understand and won't for some time. She's offering to pay you. It'll be short term and you aren't working. I can't understand not wanting to help family after such a tragic, traumatic event. Not unpopular. I feel the same way. Why wouldn't you want to help out your sister and niece and nephew? I think it's pretty selfish. It would be different if she wanted it long term, but a couple of months and mornings only? What a horrible sister. To be fair, I don't think I should or would be able to properly care for children this age that have these kinds of emotional needs. I really don't think it would be good for anyone involved. It would likely be best if OP's sister could take that few months off before starting back at work for the sake of the children. They've already had one parent go to work and never return. Yeah, wouldn't daycare with other children to distract them and have fun with be better than OP reluctantly watching them? I think OP's sister is wrong, and what the children would actually enjoy more. When I was a kid, moping around with an adult who doesn't want to play with me would not have been preferable to playing with other kids my age, no matter the recent trauma. The OP in this case is an a-hole. I understand not wanting to be responsible for someone else's child, and if not for the tragedy, I might side with the OP. However, the OP's sister has seemingly recently lost their partner, had to take up a job, and needs to find childcare for her 2 young children. This is a situation where having a strong community and family to support you is vital. It sounds like the sister just really needs their sibling by their side. I hope that OP will see that and support their sister. Am I the a-hole for yelling at a kid for crawling under my table at a restaurant? My friend Jack and I, after a long, stressful week, like to go to the local pizza place. It's not fine dining by any stretch of the imagination, but there are booths and tables of people sitting down. I see a large table near us of like 10 people, a few couples, and a bunch of small kids between like 4 and 8, and the kids are running around the restaurant being loud, while the adults are drinking wine and eating their pizza. I ignore the commotion for like 20 minutes, when suddenly, I feel like a hand on my leg, and one of the little kids is crawling under Jack and my table. I wasn't thinking and snapped at the kid and said, "Get away from our table," and the kid ran away and burst into tears. One of the parents at the other table came over and started tearing into me about how cranky and mean I was and how dare I yell at her kid who was just playing. Meanwhile, her and the other middle-aged 40-something parents are letting their kids run amok and be loud and obnoxious while my friend and I are trying to enjoy a night out. I ripped her a new one and said, "How entitled do you need to be to think it's okay to let your kids just crawl under other people's tables?" She called me an a-hole and walked away in a huff. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Her exhaustion / boundaries / parental philosophy create no obligations for you. Your personal space was invaded. You reacted to repair that. Agreed. Not the a-hole. Her inability to control her own kids does not mean you have to parent for her in her place. If the kid was just walking up to OP and trying to talk, yelling wouldn't be necessary. But this kid crossed boundaries that should have been learned multiple years ago. Do not blame exhaustion. Currently have a 3-year-old and newborn, so I am literally a walking zombie. No way in heck would I ever let my kid run around the restaurant. My daughter has never had a problem sitting in the high chair. Now the booth. With no screens, thank you very much. And if I was even with family or friend and their kids started to do that, you can dang well bet I would be a village for that child and make them sit down in that chair. Not the a-hole. I would have apologized for scaring the kid to tears, but ripped the adult a new one. I'm not saying OP should have apologized to kid or even owed the kid an apology. I just would have felt bad that the kid wasn't being minded by adults and ended up crying. OP's not the a-hole for rightfully getting angry with the parents for not looking after their children and respecting their boundaries. Though raising children is very difficult, I feel that the mother in this situation should have been mindful of the setting that they were in. I don't feel like it was necessary to yell at the child, though it might have been OP's immediate reaction to being touched. All in all, I feel that OP was justified in their reaction. Am I the a-hole for not making an effort to see all of my kids? To begin with, I love all three of my children. I was a horrible father when they were young, and I didn't really get much better as we aged. I worked out of town and I never married any of their mothers. I did always pay child support and tried my best to give them meaningful gifts and experiences when they were growing up. I took them to the Calgary Stampede, I took them camping, I took an interest in their extracurricular activities, I went to their hockey and ringette games. I made sure I was at their high school graduations and I set aside money for university. The one that didn't go got an apprenticeship in my trade and used the money to buy a welding rig. We have beers, and I'll stop by his house to see my grandchildren. His sisters are night and day. I let them know if I'm in the city and then leave it up to them. My oldest occasionally agrees to meet up with me, and then spends a couple hours berating me and lashing out on me. For a long time I put up with it. Now I tend to pay the bill and leave. The youngest will invite me to her home and I will have dinner with her family. Recently, my oldest found out from my brother that I had been in town for a few weeks and hadn't made an effort to see her. I was stuck in town getting medical stuff done, and I really didn't need her stressing me out. Her mom knows about what is going on with me and also didn't tell her I was in town. My oldest is pissed because I saw the other two. I just don't need to be yelled at for the same thing for 2 hours. Top comments. Not the a-hole for this specific question, but you sound like an a-hole in general. To be fair, it sounds like he tried. Not everyone can be a great father, but being a subpar parent does not make a person automatically an a-hole. It makes them an imperfect human. What does make a person an a-hole is not making an effort to be as good a parent as possible, given the situation. It sounds like OP did that. The daughter is well within her rights not to forgive him for being the dad she deserved and needed, but that doesn't mean he has to subject himself to her tirades when it conflicts with his mental health. I'd be on board with this if it was one kid, but it seems to be with 3 women. He could have worn a condom or gotten a vasectomy. And he's not even trying to act like he did anything more than he did or was great. Openly admits he knows he was not a good father. Although to me it sounds like he was good, but not great. But maybe my own childhood experiences make me feel that way. I think people are discounting that oldest daughter logically got the most of his worst parenting years. We've seen this before, even fairly recently on the sub, where the younger siblings don't get why older sib is not willing to just forget the past, and parents seem to think, I sucked less as time went by, is synonymous with the earlier times when I sucked the hardest shouldn't count anymore. I suspected the 2 hours of getting yelled at might be 2 hours of older daughter banging her head against the brick wall of OP's refusal to acknowledge the proceeding point and actually apologize for his early failures. Edited to add, it stands out to me on reflection that OP has very carefully not told us how much older daughter is, or if she had a different mom than 2 and 3. This is pretty important to answering the question of what OP is getting yelled at for. I would be pretty enraged too if I brought up a legitimate grievance like, you left me alone for 5 years with an unstable, incompetent mother, and the response was, but I started going to all your ringette games when you were 7. That's not the point. You don't get to run around blowing your wad carelessly for years and then expect that weekend dadding and throwing money around means you're entitled to demand a get out of responsibility for the very real harm you caused free card from your kids. Others may disagree with me here, but I believe that OP is the a-hole in this scenario. OP does not get to decide when their daughter gets over the neglect that she received at their hands. I'm not entirely sure what happened to OP's daughter growing up. However, OP has admitted to not being the best father. And as the oldest child, OP's daughter may likely have received the brunt of their neglect. All these years later, OP's daughter is still hurt by OP and is struggling to process their grief. The best thing for OP to do in this situation is to admit their wrongdoings. It might also be to both of their benefit to enter counseling together to help repair their relationship. Completely ghosting their daughter will only further strain OP's relationship with her. Am I the a-hole for treating my children differently? I am a father to 3 kids, Caitlin, 22, Eve, 15, and Nico, 13. Fake names. Caitlin is my ex-wife's daughter, who I raised since she was 2, and who I consider my child. And Eve and Nico are my biological children. Caitlin has been complaining since Eve was around 11 about how differently they were treated. I know exactly why they were treated so differently, and it's because how wildly different my kids are. Caitlin was an average student, which was absolutely okay by me and my then wife, because we didn't need a perfect student. However, she was an awful person. There were so many nights that she had snuck out, and we would be worried sick all night. She stole pills and money from anyone in the house, including her younger siblings. She would sneak in all the time as well, including boys, and frankly, it disgusts me that she would bring them in to have sex while her younger brother and sister were in the house. My ex-wife always was the one to dole the punishment, which was never physical, just getting grounded and taking her phone away, even though it barely worked. Nothing ever was set straight for her until a friend was caught by her parents and sent to a boarding school. She very nicely cleaned up her act and is now married with 3 kids. Eve and Nico are both extremely mature, kind, and just amazing people. They do great in school, get along great with people, and, very important to me, each other. They're just 2 awesome kids, and I am glad that I raised them that way. Whenever Caitlin starts to complain about how Eve and Nico have it easy, I always remind her why she was treated differently. That usually shut it down, but when Caitlin found out that Eve is on birth control, because she was honest with me and asked to go on it, she absolutely lost it. When Eve was babysitting her kids a few weeks ago, Caitlin took her phone and hid it somewhere and refused to give it back until Eve was disciplined just like she was. I have tried getting her phone back to no avail, and this is extremely stressful for me. She's a grown woman, and acting so immaturely. Caitlin is convinced I am a total a-hole, but I am honestly not sure why. Reddit, please give me a verdict. Am I the a-hole? Edit, 12/25/2020. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and Happy Friday to those who don't. Just wanted to let you guys know, we did get Eve's phone back. She is absolutely over the moon, but I am not quite sure what my next step with Caitlin is. I would hate making Eve and Nico go no contact with her, because they do love their older sister, niece, and nephews, but I think that is where this is heading. Thank you so much to everyone who offered their judgment. Have a great weekend, everyone. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Your oldest might benefit from some help/therapy, but I don't think you've done anything wrong to be considered the a-hole. I mean, some people are just bad people. Caitlin stole her sister's phone, reported stolen, and let the police handle it. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Tell Caitlin you'll be filing a police report for stolen property if she doesn't return the phone. Also, your other kids shouldn't be allowed around her unsupervised because she's mistreating Eve. Remind her that she's an adult and that is stealing from a minor. I don't know what her problem is exactly, but she needs to take some responsibility and sort it out. It's normal to parent different kids differently because they all have different needs. Sure, you'll try to make sure gifts and treats are even, but you can't be expected to punish your child because their older sibling did something wrong. What is your ex doing about this? You and your wife don't seem to have worked very hard on helping Caitlin. Your ex-wife thought everything would sort itself out. You didn't take Caitlin to therapy because you were concerned she would feel forced. Translation, you didn't want to fight her into doing something that she might not want to do, but she really needed. When she was offered the pill, she said the pill is for sluts. You didn't seem to have an adult conversation about safe and responsible sex, which you seemed to believe in. You were happy Caitlin got her act together on her own and didn't think about it twice. Caitlin has been saying she feels like she's treated differently since she was 11, and you just told her that it's because she was an awful person, your own words, about your freaking child. Was she an awful person at 11? Why didn't you and your wife ever address the reasons why she acted out? You speak about her as an issue that you thought luckily had fixed itself, rather than your daughter that you love, and I'm sure she perceives that. Her stealing the phone is not right, of course, but it seems to me that there are many more underlying issues that you and your ex-wife don't want to acknowledge. I feel bad for your daughter, honestly. She had been saying it since Eve, now 15, was 11. That would make Caitlin 17 or 18 at the time. This story really stressed me out. Although there is absolutely no excuse for Caitlin stealing her sister's phone, I can somewhat sympathize with her thought process. When Caitlin was sexually active as a teen, you said it disgusts you that she had sex in the house when her siblings were also in the home. Yet you purchased birth control for your younger daughter, who is around the same age as she was. The language OP uses when describing Caitlin is disturbing. How can you refer to a child you raised as disgusting and an awful person? As a teen, Caitlin's behavior was out of control. However, it might have been a cry for help. Dealing with a divorce isn't easy for children, and she may have benefited from counseling or therapy. I don't feel that OP was justified in treating their children differently, and this discrepancy in treatment is likely at the root of Caitlin's misbehavior, even now. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she can't visit if she's going to make my husband uncomfortable? I hate that I'm throwing this stuff on the internet for reassurance, but my whole family is angry at me, and I kind of feel like I unnecessarily flipped out. I'm very close with my mom and sister. They visited and have dinner with us all the time. Our family is real touchy-feely. It's never made us uncomfortable, and it just thought of us being friendly. My husband absolutely does not feel that way. For a few different reasons, he hates to be touched. It took halfway into our relationship before he was comfortable with me touching him. He's incredibly sweet and loving. It's just things like that that put him on edge. My sister is incapable of understanding this. Every time she comes over, she comes up behind him and scares the life out of him or grabs him in big, unexpected hugs. Every conversation has a hand on his arm or something. This isn't abnormal for her, but he obviously hates it. Now he doesn't like to say anything and tells me it doesn't bother him. But he visibly just about jumps out of his skin every time. It makes him not want to conversate or be around us. She just kind of overwhelms him into standing in the back of the room in silence. I brought it up to my sister several times how much he dislikes that. She laughs about how shy he is, says he'll get over it. We've been married 4 years. It's reached the point where he just sits in our bedroom through the evenings when my family are here. Yesterday I sent my sister a text that said she had to realize how uncomfortable she makes my husband every time she visits, and if she couldn't keep her hands to herself, I didn't want her over anymore. She immediately called me all worked up, saying she didn't mean to and how she was just trying to be nice and make him feel like family. She got upset and hung up on me. And then my mom rings me about how immature we're both being and how we're making a big deal over basic social friendliness. She even called me dirty-minded for saying she was too much. They're so put out about it that I've stopped responding to them. My husband feels terrible and thinks this stupid argument is all his fault, and everyone feels like garbage. Should I have just left it alone? I still think I should have said something, but it feels like I just made everything worse. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Your sister has to understand that your husband has boundaries, regardless of him being part of your family now. It's not his fault or yours. You're just standing up for your husband and telling your sister about his boundaries. He has the right to feel whatever he wants to feel, especially in his own home. They shouldn't come over if they can't respect his boundaries with them. Absolutely right. All I would like to add that OP, you're a very good partner to your husband, not the a-hole. It took more than 4 years of OP's sister making her husband uncomfortable for her to finally take a stand. She is not a good partner. It's reached the point where he just sits in our bedroom through the evenings. My families are here. This is what changed. He reached his threshold and she finally realized the effect it was having on him. He should have communicated his discomfort directly to the sister and his wife instead of trying to work through it. The wife is standing up for her husband because he doesn't want to make waves. He needs to be able to express his own boundaries. OP is not at all the a-hole for trying to respect their partner's boundaries. OP's sister may be a touchy-feely sort of person. However, that doesn't mean she can force her level of sociability onto another person. If OP's sister really wanted to express care and gratitude for the partner, she would accept him for who he is and not overstep his boundaries. I think OP is doing the right thing by setting guidelines on how to be respectful of their spouse. It might be best that the sister not come over to visit if she refuses to be courteous of OP's partner. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that her parents don't have to agree with her relationship? My 21 female sister isn't accepted by my 29 male parents for being gay. Throwaway account so my family can't link this back to me. For some context, my little sister is a lesbian. Our family does not support her decisions, but I don't care who she sleeps with. When she came out, she was distanced from the family, but we started talking again after finding out our father is dying. After things in the family being rocky for a long time, We decided to all get together at my parents' house. My dad said he wanted to put all the drama and bickering aside, and if we have a problem with each other, we can wait until he passes. Everyone agrees, including my sister, so I was expecting to have a nice family barbecue. My family wanted to meet my sister's girlfriend and insisted that she brought her over. We were all excited to meet her. My sister's girlfriend seemed like a nice girl, but she was very standoffish. She kept to herself and didn't speak much to my parents and me. For the most part, she was glued to my sister. This caused some awkward silence. I started asking about their relationship. How did they meet? How long have they been together? And I even joked around about if she hurt my sister, blah blah blah. My parents started acting stranger by each question. I asked my mom what was wrong, and her response was, "This isn't right." I could tell my sister and her girlfriend were uncomfortable, and my dad tried to calm my mom down. My sister, probably fed up with being treated like garbage for the last few years, spoke up and asked my parents what was the point of inviting them if she isn't going to be okay with seeing them together. This caused my mother to explode with anger because she felt my sister was being disrespectful. My mother goes on to say a lot of other things that I'm not going to say because I will be banned. My sister started to cry and hyperventilate. Her girlfriend starts to comfort her and tries to get her to calm down. And this causes my mom to tell her that if you're going to be dramatic and act like a child, you need to leave. You're upsetting your father. Before my sister could respond, her girlfriend is grabbing their things and taking my sister to the car. I tried to rationalize this whole situation with my parents. They were no use. They thought she was putting on a show in front of her girlfriend to make them look bad. They proceeded to say that they're allowed to be uncomfortable and feel differently than her. I explained to them that this is who she loves. No one has to agree with it, but we should still love her. I've tried talking to my sister about the whole situation, and apparently I defend our parents too much. I told her that our parents don't have to agree with her relationship, but they should. She told me that I'm being an a-hole for expecting her to pretend to be someone else just because our dad is dying. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Stop trying to walk some higher middle ground. Your parents suck. Support your sister. You're the a-hole. The funny part is that the middle ground of doing nothing to shut down a bigot isn't any better than actually being a bigot. But I didn't say her sexual orientation is wrong. But your actions demonstrate that you don't want to disagree with the views of the a-hole who said it was, and actions speak a lot louder than words. He also calls it a choice on his sister's part, so it's pretty clear where he stands. Edited to fix pronouns. It is a choice. His sister can 1. Choose to conform to her parents' ideals and probably be horrendously unhappy, aka living a lie. Or 2. Be true to herself and love the person who she falls in love with and live a long, loving, and emotionally healthy life. Of course, choice 2 is the right thing to do, but you can't answer that question until you are in that person's shoes. Also, it is clear that OP was not intending to over-trivialize homosexuality. Someone's sexuality is not a choice, no more than your eye color is. If it was, many gay and lesbian people probably would not choose to be because of all the difficulties it causes them, such as having a-hole parents who pretty much disown you for something you don't have any control over. In this situation, OP definitely should have stepped up to support their sister. It sounds like OP's sister already has very few people in their life that love and support them after coming out, and would likely benefit from OP standing up for her in that situation. Like some of the other commentators said, standing by and watching their sister get harassed by their parents made the OP just as bad. OP's sister has every right to feel angry towards them for not backing her, and for trying to make excuses for the parents. When it comes to bigotry and homophobia, there really isn't a middle ground. Am I the a-hole for going to my sister's university? Me and my sister used to be close, but when I was 5 and she was 7, I got sick up until I was 15. Because I was sick, my parents often stopped her from doing normal things on my account. At first, I was okay with her doing kid stuff, but at one point I got bitter and kind of guilt-tripped my parents and her to let her stay with me. But I did that up until I was 12. After I noticed that it was leading to a strain in our relationship and her hating me, I tried to get back on her good side because she was no longer enthusiastic to stay with me like before. And we would play games, and she would sing and do things with me. I tried to convince my parents to let her do stuff because she would come back from school, then spend 5 to 7 hours with me, then go home, and that cycle would repeat itself. But my parents still insisted on it and thought I was being brave, even though I would beg them to let her have a life. When I turned 15, I had surgery and was doing better, but I was still dealing with some of the side effects from the drugs I was taking. That only lasted for a year. My parents had finally let her do things she wanted to do. This was like midway through her junior year, but the damage was already done. She had stopped communicating with me and my parents. Like when we'd sit down to dinner and she'd only say one word to my parents and then lock the door to her room. And she did not have any friends. She told my aunt, and my aunt told my parents because she was worried about her mental health. My parents tried to do family therapy before she left for college, but she still didn't communicate. She can literally spend a whole month without saying a word to anyone. When she went to college, she cut off her parents and me. She changed her number and everything. Last year, after doing some research, I found her on Instagram. She seemed much happier there. Found out her university and applied there. I wanted to rekindle our relationship now that she seemed to be in a better mental space. Last semester, I contacted her through university email and told her we could meet for coffee. She ignored all of my emails. This year, I decided to be more direct, so I went to her student organization and told her hi. She ignored me, but her friends asked who I was and I told them I was her sister, and they seemed surprised because she didn't mention me. She then told me she would go to a cafe, and she chewed me out for picking this university. She referred to it as her safe space. I'm now feeling like I may have gone about this the wrong way, but at the same time, I just wanted us to be close again. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. You're the a-hole. She want no contact, so instead of respecting her decision, you stalk her, apply, and go to the same college and expect her to be happy? I would not be surprised if her sister transfers to another school. Hopefully she doesn't, and makes complaints to the school and/or police for harassment. What would she report? That her sister attended the same college and approached her to talk? That's not a crime. Unless OP goes over the line, example, starts following her everywhere, breaks into her home/dorm, makes threats, etc. This isn't a police matter. Edit. I see OP made a comment she sent hundreds of emails, not a few like originally portrayed. If that's true, I'll change my judgment. She's gone over the line and is actually harassing her sister. OP is just as much the product of bad parenting as her sister. As a preteen that was sick and not able to live a normal life, they reacted out of jealousy. The parents overcorrected and destroyed their relationship. It sounds like OP is an overly sheltered child reaching out to a sibling they idolized. OP should respect their siblings' wish not to interact, but I am sad their parents stole their relationship. I understand that OP wants to rekindle the tumultuous relationship they have with their sister. However, OP's sister may not be ready or in the space where she feels comfortable with rehashing old issues. It sounds like growing up, OP's sister was not allowed to socialize or do activities outside of the home due to OP's illness. Now that OP's sister is in college, she's finally getting the opportunity to find herself and discover who she is. In order to do that, she needs space. OP needs to respect that, and maybe in time, OP's sister will be ready to talk. Am I the a-hole for embarrassing my sister's friend and making her feel unwelcome? My sister, cousin, and a couple of friends came over last night after work. My sister brought a friend of hers I'd only met a few times that I've never had an issue with. At one point, I went to the bathroom and the ladies were in the living room, calmly enjoying wine. When I came out, my sister's friend was in the kitchen, arguing with my son. I asked her what she was doing. She said my son went into the kitchen to get food, and she told him to wait until I came out of the bathroom to ask me for permission. I stared at her for a second and then said, "Who the heck are you? You don't live here, he does. Who are you to tell him he can't go in his own kitchen?" She looked surprised, and she said she was trying to be helpful. I repeated my question of why she thought it was okay to tell someone they can't use their kitchen when she's a guest in someone else's house. She dodged the question and then brought up that she's a teacher, which isn't even relevant, and sometimes kids try to get around rules. I asked her what that has to do with anything. I then asked who even gave her permission to go in my kitchen. She said she followed my son in. I said, "So you think my son needs permission to go in his own kitchen, but you can go wherever you like in my house without invitation? So you have more rights here than he does." She said she didn't feel welcome anymore and was leaving. She went back in the living room, grabbed her bag, and walked out. My sister asked what happened, and I explained that she had a disagreement with my son. My cousin and some of the other ladies said they thought it was strange she followed him into the kitchen and had been wondering why she did that, and thought her motive was weird as hell. My sister and a couple other ladies said her behavior was perfectly normal and I was unnecessarily hostile to her. My cousin said, "But why would you confront a child you don't know instead of saying something to the aunt who's right here? That's so weird." Everyone but my sister acknowledged that part was weird, and we all moved on. Later, my sister confronted me privately and said she was upset I chased off her friend. She said she really likes this woman, and that I was way over the top in the way I spoke to her. I can be a little extra when it comes to defending my kid. So was I an a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. This lady way overstepped, and you corrected her in a way that most parents would when their child is being attacked, and he was. You should sleep well knowing you did the right thing, and your son will sleep better knowing his parent 100% has his back. Your sister can be upset that a confrontation happened between a friend and her sibling, but her friend was way out of line. Yeah, my sister would have been the one telling her friend off if that happened to one of our kids. Met casually just a few times, first time in OP's house, immediately starts ordering around her kid over food in the fridge. Yeah, that ain't normal. Agreed. And as much as I don't like confrontation, people like this need to be called out so they don't continually do it and think it's okay because nobody says anything. OP was 100% in the right here. It's incredibly weird that a woman who is a complete stranger to you and your child followed them around the house and policed your child. Over food, no less. The sister's friend sounds like an almond mom. She had no right to implement her own strict parenting style onto a child she didn't know, and OP had every right to call her out for her entitlement. I also think it's strange that OP's sister defended her friend in this situation, and it says something about her character. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to give my sister back her child after taking full custody for 5 years? Newly made throwaway account. I, 30 female, have been taking care of my niece, now 7 female, for the past 5 years, after my sister, 32 female, abandoned her at my doorstep and disappeared. My sister was going through a difficult time with her mental health, and she was unable to provide a stable environment for her daughter. At the time, I didn't hesitate to take my niece in and provide for her with a loving and secure home. When my sister left her daughter with me, she didn't leave any contact information, and we had no way of reaching her. We searched for her, but we couldn't find any leads. I was left with no choice but to take full custody of my niece, and I have been her primary caregiver ever since. During the past 5 years, I have watched my niece grow into an amazing young girl. I have provided her with a stable and secure environment, and I have been there for her during all the milestones. I have taken her to school, helped her with her homework, taken her to doctor's appointments, and celebrated her birthdays with her. Recently, my sister has reached out to me, and she informed me that she's doing better with her mental health and wants her daughter back. Although I'm happy that my sister is doing better, I'm not ready to give up custody of my niece. My niece has become a bigger part of my life, and I love her like my own child. My sister has been threatening to take legal action against me if I don't give her her daughter back. However, I'm not afraid. My best friend is a lawyer who specializes in custody cases, and I'm prepared to fight for my niece's best interests. I understand that my sister is the biological mother of my niece, but I feel like I'm the only mother figure she has known for the past 5 years. I'm torn between my love for my niece and my loyalty to my sister. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my sister back her child? TLDR, am I the a-hole for not wanting to give my sister back her daughter after taking full custody of her for 5 years due to her mental health issues? My sister has reached out saying she's doing better and wants her daughter back, but I love my niece and don't want to give her up. My sister is threatening legal action, but I'm prepared to fight for my niece's best interests. Top comments. You're the only mother she has ever known. Fight this with every ounce of strength and every penny you have. Well done and good luck. Not the a-hole. If your sister really wants to come back in and build a relationship, she's got to understand she is a stranger to this little girl. How about staying over a night to visit you, having a park playdate, even just going to a cafe together for lunch? Not the a-hole. In fact, you're amazing for stepping up as a parent. The fact she bounced back out of nowhere and dropped a lawsuit threat without trying to even say hi to her child tells you everything. Not the a-hole. Do not give in. Get your lawyer friend and retainer and comply with court orders, but that's it. I don't know if it's possible since she's reached out, but ask about termination of parental rights or legal adoption of niece. File from where you and niece reside. I would be proactive about securing her future with you. Wait. So sister no longer even knows who the child is but wants full custody after literally abandoning her and disappearing for 5 freaking years? And hasn't even spent any time with the child to get to know her. She just phones in and says, "Hi, yeah, I'm good now, so hand over the child I completely abandoned. If you don't, I'll sue." For real? Yeah, hard pass, not the a-hole. Go to court and fight for full custody if you don't already have it. Get your lawyer friend working on it yesterday. You can love your sister and have her back, but she is most definitely not okay. Protect your daughter. Fingers are crossed that she already has full parental rights. It would have been necessary for a lot of things, but the school or doctor's office might not have checked what her legal relationship was with the child. OP has spent the last 5 years of her life raising, caring for, and loving their niece, who they likely see as a daughter. OP has no legal or moral obligation to give their sister full custody of their child. If OP's sister really cared about the well-being of the child, she would allow the little girl to stay with the only mother she's ever really known. If not for this situation, OP's sister and the little girl may benefit from spending some quality time together on playdates and getting to know each other as family. However, OP's sister is threatening legal action and may not be safe around the child. At the end of the day, the child is still OP's daughter, and there's likely nothing that will separate their bond. Thanks for watching. Let me know down below if you agree with the verdict. Also, consider checking out my other channel, star_vingart, where I post my artwork, and my Etsy, Starving Art Company, where I sell my art prints and stickers. Bye!